There's 20 laps to go in the 2024 Ally 400. Two of the sport's biggest rivals are at play here, as Denny Hamlin is chasing down Ross Chastain. For the next 5 laps, Hamlin would quickly gain on Chastain. But Chastain, who is notoriously hard to pass in normal situations, would not be letting his biggest rival by without a fight. For the next few laps, Chastain would fend off the fight from the 11th car. But unfortunately for Chastain, with only 7 laps to go, he got loose entering one, allowing Hamlin to sneak by. While normally their battles end with someone spinning, this one seemed like it'd be a nice exception. That was until with 2 laps to go, someone went for a spin. But it wasn't Chastain or Hamlin. It was instead the 2 car of Austin Spindrick spinning it. I just said Spindrick. But it wasn't Chastain or Hamlin this time. It was instead the 2 car of Austin Cindric spinning off the side of Doug Braxton's 10 car in a battle for, get this, 21st. What if I told you this would send the race into a spiral of events that would cause Chastain nor Hamlin to win this race? I think I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. I think it's time we talk about overtime. Let's pause this race right here and come back to it later, because we need to first discuss what overtime is. NASCAR overtime is a procedure that pretty much guarantees a green flag finish. The rule itself can be traced back to the 90s where NASCAR red flag races, if a late race yellow came out, that could end the race. Although this was not made a rule till around the mid-2000s where races ending under yellow would come to an ugly end. So let's travel back a couple decades. The 2004 Aaron's 499 at Talladega was shaping to have a titanic battle for the win between 2 of the sport's most popular drivers. In the 24 car was Hendrick Motorsports' Jeff Gordon, and in the 8 car was NASCAR's favorite son, DEI's Dale Earnhardt Jr. That was until 5 laps to go when Gordon's teammate Brian Vickers went for a spin in turn 3. Now, despite Vickers only making slight contact with Ricky Rudd and being able to get back going without issue after his spin, NASCAR still decided to throw the caution. As the field slowed to pace car speed in the tri-oval, the crowd went wild as their favorite son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., appeared ahead of them.
It would be obviously either Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the 8 or Jeff Gordon in the 24.
But that excitement would be short-lived because per NASCAR rules, the field was frozen at the time of caution, and that would determine the order for the restart. So much to the dismay of the crowd, that means Jeff Gordon would be the leader. But that's okay, because Dale Jr. would still have a chance at Gordon on the ensuing restart that was almost guaranteed to happen. Because as Fox Sports analyst Dale Waltrip would point out, Vickers didn't really hit anything, there was no debris, no problem on track, so there's no reason they can't go back green with 4 laps to go, right? Well, one caution lap went by, and then another, then the final lap was started behind the pace car, meaning the race would not go back green. Jeff Gordon would go on to win the race, and in the process was showered by booze and beer cans from the angry Talladega crowd. Now you may be asking, why didn't NASCAR go back green? And more importantly, why didn't they just throw the red flag? Well, there's answers to both those questions. To answer the first question, NASCAR didn't go back green because they failed to sort out the running order. To answer the second question, they didn't throw the red because it already had gone past the point where NASCAR could throw the red. Back then, there was a rule where NASCAR could not throw a red flag beyond a certain lap, and NASCAR had already passed that lap, meaning they couldn't throw it. With the backlash this race caused, NASCAR decided to implement a new rule a few months later. This rule would morph into what's now known as overtime. The way this rule would work is if a late race caution comes out that would cause the race to end under yellow, 2 laps would be arbitrarily added to the end of the race. With overtime only being 2 laps, that means the field will see a sequence of 3 flags. The green signifying the start of the sprint, the white signifying the final lap of the sprint, and then the checkered, like normal, signifies the end of the race. This created a sequence that goes green, white, checkered. Hence overtime's original name, green, white, checkered. But there's one flag that seems to be seen the most in the sequence, and that's the yellow flag, which in the case of overtime signifies it's time to bunch the field back up 2 by 2 and try again. This process is done until the drivers can finally get it right, and the race can end in a green. In the past, they would only limit them to 3 attempts, but in recent years, they've given them unlimited attempts to finish overtime, a rule that has absolutely never come back to bite NASCAR in the ass. Now you have the background on this rule, let's return to a couple weeks ago in Nashville. Before we discuss the happenings of overtime itself, we have to address the factor that would rear its ugly head throughout the sequence. Fuel mileage. Race leader Denny Hamlin was already concerned about fuel trying to make it to the scheduled distance. The additional overtime laps were making the 11 team sweat, with crew chief Chris Gabehart saying they really only have enough for 1 overtime attempt. But it wasn't only Hamlin concerned about fuel, pretty much every other driver had some fuel concerns. None of the top 5 would decide to pit under caution though. The first driver that came down would be Bubba Wallace in 6th place. After the stops, Hamlin's crew chief Chris Gabehart would go on to say this.
Yeah, I think I hate that the 2 spun out. That's what I hate. But we have enough fuel to get it done. We have the fastest car and the fastest driver. Just got to have a clean restart, and hopefully it's the last one.
On to the first overtime attempt.
Position before where he didn't get a good launch and wasn't able to win the race late.
It is overtime, presented by Credit One Bank as they come into the restart zone. Hamlin on the inside, Chastain on the outside.
outside. Green flag back in the air. A big push by the 5, and up the racetrack, he catches the 1. Chastain into the wall. Big contact, caution comes out again.
And just like that, the first domino has fallen, as the forever aggressive Kyle Larson hit the apron, which sent him up the track right into Ross Chastain. This would not only take out one of the contenders, it would also add more fuel concerns. Although, despite the concerns, everybody would decide to risk it and stay out for the second restart. Overtime attempt number 2.
Not sure how that happened. We'll find out, but green flag back in the air. A great start for the 11. The 5 ducked down, cut the 19, and we've got a spin in the back. Let's see if he's able to keep it straight and we stay green. 3 wide per second. Denny Hamlin pulling away. Will he have enough fuel to come all the way back around? They're wrecking behind him. The caution will come out again. There's more overtime.
And then once again, a wreck has put us under caution. This time it would be a chain reaction from an overzealous four-wheel move. It would create a stack-up, causing Ryan Preece to get into Harrison Burton, who would collect Justin Haley, Corey Heim, and others. This is yet another example of drivers pushing a little too hard on the restart to quickly gain spots and improve their eventual finishing position, causing melee late in the race. But this is just what happens when you bunch a bunch of drivers together for a sprint. They're going to go for every position possible, and it will create accidents like this. When pit road opened, none of the contenders came down, a decision that would prove costly for them. On to overtime attempt number 3.
It's overtime again. 2 to go from Nashville. The 5 doesn't go. They bottle up behind him. Big wreck for the 8. Out of fuel. 5 was out of fuel. Caution comes out again.
And then within seconds of going green, we are back under yellow. This time was not due to over-aggression from the driver's seat, it would be over-aggression from the pit box. Coming to green, the driver leading the outside lane, Kyle Larson, would sputter, causing him to not get going for the restart, causing a stack-up that would cause Kyle Busch to spit into the outside wall. This would finally force Hamlin's hand, as he would have to go in pit road, as well as Martin Truex Jr., causing the teammates to be removed from contention from today's win. This would handily lead to Joey Logano, who last pit on the very same lap as Hamlin and Truex, meaning he's going to need a miracle to pull off this, as it has been over 100 laps since he last pitted. The reason he's trying to pull off such an aggressive save is he needs a win to get into the playoffs, as a down year to that point meant he was currently sitting only slightly above the playoff cut line, meaning he was in an uncomfortable position on points, but still could get in if all goes right into the playoffs. But with this move, it's clear Joey and his team did not want to get on points, they wanted to secure their spot and win. To his outside would be Ford teammate Chase Briscoe. He was in a similar position to Logano, except he had pitted a few laps later and was only slightly below the cut line heading into the race. Behind them were Spire Motorsports teammates Corey LaJoie and Zane Smith, who both needed a win to make the playoffs as they sat 29th and 34th in the points, respectively. With that, it was time for overtime attempt number 4.
In that second row, Logano and Chase Briscoe making up row 1. Looks like the 9's out of fuel. He falls back. They're side by side for the lead.
48 looks like he's not accelerating as well as he had hoped. The 71 has some momentum battling up front.
Logano back to the inside. Chase Briscoe fighting on the outside. Logano drifts up the racetrack. He takes Briscoe all the way up out of the groove.
If Briscoe gets to him.
White flag here by 2, yellow's out, crap, stay field.
One more time, we're going to try overtime. They didn't get to the white flag.
So close, as this time they make it all the way to turn 4 before Josh Berry would go spinning into the turn 3 wall. But even more concerning for race leader Joey Logano was the fact that Chase Elliott, who pitted on the same lap as Logano, ran out of the gas like his teammate did on the restart. Despite this, Joey Logano and Briscoe decided to stay out, with Logano's crew chief Paul Wells stating they had 4 laps left on fuel. On to overtime attempt number 5.
Back in the gas they go. Both get away clean.
Great restart for Logano. Now it's about hitting your marks. You don't have to defend. Just make lap time.
And do you have enough fuel? Tyler Reddick making the move on the high side all the way up to 4th. Down the backstretch, here comes Briscoe. Logano on the bottom. Briscoe drifting back. Here comes Reddick.
He is flying. He is going to get to the 22.
1 to go. White flag in the air. Next flag ends the race. Reddick to the high side. Logano drifts up. Logano looking for a... Reddick, one more chance. Through 3 and 4 for the final time. He goes up the racetrack. Logano goes up to block. Off turn 4. Logano is going to win in Nashville.
Finally, after 5 overtime attempts and a good amount of caution laps, the race has finally come to a conclusion. Now, what have we learned from whatever that was? If you have a field of extremely aggressive drivers, a restart with 2 laps to go, it's going to cause mayhem. I don't blame the drivers being aggressive because at the end of the day, this is their livelihood, and they need to take advantage of every opportunity to get the best finish they possibly can to ensure they have a job. But at the same time, if you're NASCAR, you need to be able to say when enough is enough and just end the race. I'm all for trying to give the fans a show and give them the green flag finish, but sometimes you just have to let a race under their caution. I've attempted just simply too much in normal circumstances, but at Nashville it was even worse, as it is tacked on an extra half hour to the race I was already dragged on by rain delay. Factoring overtime and a rain delay, the race took over 5.5 hours. For trying to gain more young fans, we just cannot have races that take that long with the short attention spans younger people have nowadays. And speaking of dragging things on, I saw people try to compare this overtime to overtime in other sports, and I think that's just a dumb comparison. First of all, the reasons they exist are completely different. In football, overtime exists because the game is tied at the end of regulation and they need to determine a winner. While in NASCAR, it exists to create an artificial green flag finish. Also in football, overtime extended because both defenses made a stop or both defenses scored. That shows off the most exciting parts of the game, while in NASCAR, overtime gets expended because someone typically wrecked. And I don't know about you, I don't think that's peak NASCAR to me. But that could just be me. You can say, oh, at least we got a green flag finish, but what if I told you we almost didn't? Because keep in mind, with overtime, if the caution comes out in the last lap, the race is over. And that could have happened many times during that final lap, as there was just smoke and cars spinning all over the place. Thankfully, it was insignificant enough that the race could continue and we could actually get a finish. Now, I could go on and on with the problems over time, but what's the point of complaining without offering a solution? And my solution is pretty simple. Just limit it to 1 attempt. It's the simplest solution that'll make sure they at least try to get a green flag finish, but it won't drag it on and on. Also would solve a problem this specific race had where fuel mileage was all over the place and the contenders had to pit and someone who was running 14th at the time of yellow won the race. Normally, I say fuel mileage races are legit wins because, hey, they just plan better. But in this instance, you can't plan for laps you don't foresee coming. Well, that's my take on overtime. Comment what you think about overtime and also leave some suggestions how I can improve my videos going forward. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you at the races.